Thanks for tuning in to Season 4 of Strange, Rare, and Peculiar Homeopathy Podcast, where homeopathy lives, breathes, and evolves with Denise Strages and Alistair Gray. We'll be exploring modern practice, research, and philosophy, from Hahnemann's radical insights to today's breakthroughs and discoveries. Get ready for homeopathy woes, feedback from pros, and the more you knows.
Hi, folks. Good afternoon, or perhaps good morning, or even good evening. Wherever you are, big fat welcome. My name's Alistair Gray, and I'm here with.
Denise Strages. That's me. Hello. And we're in our own offices today, which feels kind of funny.
Hello.
Hello. We're trying something new, but the hardest part about it is that we had to split the tea. So I have my extra tea in a thermos and Al's got his in the teapot. But we have some great things to talk with you about today. I think a pretty good agenda. And one of the things we realize is that there are lots of new people who are coming to join us. And so we thought we would do just a little introduction and tell you that we together run the Academy of Homeopathy Education, which is an accredited professional homeopathy program. We're the preferred educational provider for the American Institute of Homeopathy. That's the medical homeopaths in the United States. And we're enrolling for September. Gosh, we've been at this for a while. We've run our program, I think 32 times as of now, right? So
Yep,
this will be,
32 times.
yeah. So, yeah, we've gotten pretty good at it. We also have the Institute for the Advancement of Homeopathy. That's the charity that we founded. We've got our research office called Home Research. We also run a helpline that's called Homeopathy Help Now. You can go to homeopathyhelpnow.com. You'll find all the URLs for this in the show notes. But if you need acute care or chronic care, we have an acute care helpline. And then we have chronic care available at different levels of care, including complex care, which is highly trained professionals that we have vetted through a practitioner review committee to make sure that they are qualified to deliver the care that people are looking for. Anywho, that's us. That's what we do. Let's get down to business.
Business.
Business. Can I tell you, we've got an agenda for today. Let me tell you what's on the agenda. So the first thing is we have a listener comment and question that's going to kick things off.
It's a
And
good
then
one.
it is really good. I'm so grateful that people are sending us feedback and information. Thanks for that. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to riff off of what she asked us, which leads us to a couple of other things. We're going to talk about how there are these trends that are happening in homeopathy that are sort of baffling to people who have been practicing homeopathy longer than like 15 minutes ago. And it's that people are confusing sort of what a homeopathic remedy is, a dynamized substance, and how we understand what it does with something that is ultra diluted. So we're going to talk about that, sort of people who are using homeopathic remedies as if they are a supplement of some sort. And then we're going to finish up with why camphor is not a sorbet course between protocols. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a tough one. So that's what we're going to work towards. So should I start by reading this listener comment?
Knock yourself out.
Okay. So she says, this video, so this is in response to a recent podcast that we did on miasms, and we were talking, and this was maybe two podcasts ago, maybe three, and we were talking about sort of the complexity of this and what it actually means and how it's been sort of oversimplified and misapplied and misappropriated in ways that really are out of sync with kind of the intentions of the sort of principles and practice of homeopathy. Anyway, so she writes this quote, this video was credibly, as opposed to incredibly, encouraging to hear how deeply anchored autoimmune diseases can graduate and how it just takes time and a very skilled homeopath. I needed to hear this. I'm currently working with a homeopath who bases his protocols on miasms, and I'm nearly a year into working with him. And while the chronic disease and its symptoms haven't changed, other health issues have cropped up. I'd be curious to hear about how these diseases can progress as they're being, quote, uprooted, and if it's normal to see those with autoimmune diseases experience brand new acute symptoms while uprooting the diseases with homeopathy. I started out with chronic and severe Crohn's, and now I'm having brand new epileptic and PPP, swinging potassium symptoms. I'm just standing back looking at all of my symptoms and thinking, wow, what a mess.
Uh-huh.
First of all, I want to say I'm really sorry for this person who wrote in that this is what's happening for you. And no, that is not what should happen with homeopathy, not at all.
It's not heading in the right direction, just the sounds of that, especially the last part. But there's
Yeah,
something deeply correct about what's in that message, though, as well, right? And that is that if you lob a pebble into a pond, there are ripples.
yeah,
Or if
totally.
you grab a plant, let's say it's kind of heading onto spring, it's time to get out there and prune the roses. But if I grabbed a rose by the base and tore it out of the ground, then
Mm,
there would be repercussions, not only for the rose, but for the soil around it. And so I think what you just said is I'd be curious to hear about how these diseases can progress as they're being uprooted,
yeah.
and if it's normal to see those with autoimmune diseases experience brand new symptoms. I mean, to my mind, yeah, I kind of would have, I expect it, but I expect something, I would contextualize it with different language and always
Heading in a direction of better health.
heading in a better direction.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that nowhere, if I can just go for a minute deep, because nowhere in anywhere of in Hahnemann's writings does he talk about the perfect remedy. What he talks about are similars, and for the most part, the language is pretty relaxed. It is do your best, find a close similar,
Yeah.
and then, especially say aphorism 171,
Yeah.
and you will work your way moving forward progressively through different remedies, one in succession to the other, over a period of time and multiple consultations until you get to your goal.
Yeah.
And those steps are very often accompanied by what we call an accessory symptom. It's like if you've got, I don't know, I usually end up, doing these puppet movements with my hands. But let's say if you've got a chronic disease and it kind of looks like that, then after your first move or two, your first remedy or the first month of the treatment, then the client comes back next week and they have a chronic disease. I'm going to have to, I can't do it now, that looks like that, right?
So he's
Then
just had five fingers up and now he's got three fingers up, showing that
so that becomes that because two things they've disappeared. My menstruation is regular and my skin eruptions have miraculously and happily disappeared. But I've got this new accessory symptom which has emerged,
yeah.
and sometimes it's two. Now the accessory symptoms would necessarily you would want to see that they're less severe than the types of accessory symptoms or development of the chronic condition than you're talking about. But what we, of course, do is that in our analysis, we include the accessory symptom, which is of the chronic disease previously dormant, and we add it to our analysis. Now, this is where unbelievably, I can't believe that homeopaths just start prescribing on top of remedies or a treatment plan that's already working. So the last thing to do is start, looking for new remedies in that kind of circumstance. But the homeopath, the circumspect homeopath, is going to look at that, add that, and see what is the next move. And it might be a continuation of the same remedy, different potency. We've got some ninja moves around that, or some sort of associated close remedy, or maybe even a remedy if it's two accessory symptoms, and you end up with something that looks like that, then that totality of symptoms is going to take you to your next remedy, and so on and so on and so on, right?
Yeah, so this is if you're wanting to look this up to get more information about it, this is aphorisms 179 and 180. This is the section of Hahnemann's Organon of Medicine where he's talking about case management. And this is really key. So I'm going to give a little synopsis of what you said, Al. Let me make sure that I've heard this correctly, or just with regard to what this person who wrote in is saying, she's her the symptoms that she had have not changed, and she has brand new symptoms, some of which are of a deeper disease. So she had severe chronic and severe Crohn's, and now she has epileptic symptoms and swinging potassium symptoms, both of which are evidence that the disease is not moving her. She's not moving to a greater level of health,
No.
right? So that's not good. So what Hahnemann, and that shouldn't happen. And so there are a couple things that we have to talk about here because I think this really brings us to this idea of case management. And so there are a couple of important things. First is just that Hahnemann points out that, look, um, moving a person from a deep state of chronic disease to health, as Alistair said, it takes time. And you, with careful selection, will select the most well-indicated remedy,
Mm.
and it's one, it's not 10 million, and it's not two or three. No matter what anybody says, there is zero evidence that that is the way that homeopathy works. But what Hahnemann tells us, and what 230 years of clinical evidence has shown, is that you assess the action of the remedy and you move forward. And the deeper and the longer standing the disease is, the longer it may take to turn around, which introduces a couple of problems, right? Because so when people don't understand what it means to help a person through a chronic disease, they then jump from remedy to remedy, thinking, "Oh, I need to do this and that," and you start getting into whack-a-mole, right? So that's one issue. Hahnemann says, look, in Aphorism 179, he's saying the medicine first selected will be able to only partially, not exactly fit the case because, there weren't enough symptoms or whatever to guide an apt choice. And that's just the reality. And look, in the 21st century, we have multiple, layers of disease that we're dealing with, along with all the environmental issues that are a challenge to health. So he says, so what happens is you have the best selected remedy, medicine, and then you allow that medicine to play through. And if there are some accessory ailments that are aroused, then because you are prescribing in a very gentle way, these should dissipate they should be mostly unnoticed.
Mm.
If, however, you notice them, if they are problematic, that means that the remedy that was selected was not a good choice. Therefore, the case is retaken inclusive of that new totality of symptoms. So this is why it's really important to have a skilled homeopath who not only understands materia medica, the remedies, but their action and how to move with them. Yeah. What do you think, Al? That's kind of, do you
Yeah,
think?
I'm just reading back on that email, and I'm reading between the lines as well because when this writer says, "I'm currently working with a homeopath that bases protocols on miasms," I'm hearing nosodes in there.
Yeah,
That sounds
totally.
like, just a quick comment on that. For me, and look, well, grounded in Hahnemannian homeopathy, what the original approach was that the theory of chronic disease was designed to make things easier rather than including all of the acute remedies and all the chronic remedies in what is a choice of best possible match for this person in front of you. It's like a statistical nightmare. But what you're doing with your miasmatic analysis is choosing what's predominant and then basing your choice of remedies based on the primary, secondary, or tertiary remedies from that miasm. You're making your job a lot easier. Now, what Hahnemann did is, therefore, if it was a predominantly syphilitic case, the remedies might be mercury, aurum, or platina, but syphilinum didn't exist. If it was a psychotic case, the remedy might be thuya, natrum sulph, or I don't know, pulsatilla. But
Got it. Let me translate though, because
metaurinum didn't exist. The nosode didn't exist. These days, the emphasis is on the nosode and prescribing nosodes when they're not indicated. Oh, yeah.
So a nosode, for those who are new around these parts, is a remedy that's been made from a disease product.
Mm.
So there are remedies made from disease products, nosodes, and there are remedies that are made from healthy tissue and or a healthy, anything to do with a healthy body part or substance. And those are called sarcodes. Now, this is taking us to the next part of our conversation because there has been this. So there are two trends. Well, there are so many trends that are happening in homeopathy. Who thought homeopathy would become trendy? We were just like these book nerds, right? Quietly helping people in the background. And now, because people think there's money to be made, they're selling anybody any kind of crap, calling it homeopathy. And people are starting to, we have evidence of harm now. And by the way, that's why if you're listening to this podcast for the first time or newly listening to us, this season is called Truth. And our goal this season is to just open the door and talk about all the dirty laundry that's here to say, listen, if you are a person who's turning up to be treated by a homeopath, or you've been looking at these Facebook groups, or maybe you're thinking about studying homeopathy, there's homeopathy, and then there's a way in which substances have been prepared according to kind of the methodology for which a homeopathic remedy would be made, but they're being used in completely different ways. And that's the next thing that we need to talk about because um, so something that it
Because
never
you don't want to be part of the commodification, right?
exactly, you don't want to be a part of the commodification
Yeah.
because you can get hurt.
Yeah.
But the one thing that never would have occurred to me is that people are taking homeopathic medicines in lieu of a vitamin. So this is like a new trend that we've been hearing about. So we thought we would just kind of address this. So in order to talk about that, so people are saying, oh, well, I need magnesium, therefore I'm going to take magnesium carbonicum, or I need more calcium, so I'm going to take, calcium carbonate or calc carb. But this is really different than taking a supplement, which is a material dose, is really different than taking a homeopathic remedy, which is a dynamized substance. And we have to talk about the definitions between those. But the first sort of bifurcation is between something that is just ultra diluted and something that has been potentized or dynamized, because there is a different outcome. And I think ultra dilution it's a different term. That's what's being used in in like nanomedicine, or not nanomedicine. How would you describe it? I'm going to look it up since I'm sitting here at my desk. I should have done
I'm
that before.
not quite sure, but the direction you're going. But yeah.
So because well, I'm just looking at ultra dilution. Oh, so they're saying that that's so it's interesting. If you look at the definition of ultra dilution, it says, particularly in homeopathy, refers to the practice of using extremely high dilutions of substances, often beyond Avogadro's limit, which is the point at which the material substance is no longer evident. But what's interesting is that it's saying it involves a series of dilutions and succussions, right? Mixing with a large amount of a solvent, water. It says typically water or alcohol. But what's missing from that is what happens when a medicine is prepared according to Hahnemann's directive, is that you've got this very particular effect that renders a medicine actually stronger, and it brings out the inherent healing effect. So Hahnemann talks about this in aphorism 269. And 269 is really quite interesting. We've talked about on here before, but he says, for its own special purpose, the homeopathic medical art develops to a formerly unheard of degree. So it's stronger. It's not weaker, right? It's stronger. The internal spirit-like medicinal powers of crude substances. And then he goes on to say this remarkable alteration in the properties of natural bodies is achieved through mechanical action on their smallest particles by trituration and succussion. And then he goes on to talk about how it then develops the latent dynamic powers of the substance, which were previously unnoticeable as if slumbering.
So in every remedy, there is potential. In every substance, there's potential, and you can only realize or liberate that potential through dilution and succussion, right?
Yeah, and he says the dynamic powers of these substances mainly have an influence on the life principle, so on the deepest aspect of our being,
Right.
on the condition of animal life. Therefore, this process is called dynamization or potentization, which is the development of the medicinal power. And its products are called dynamizations or potencies of different degrees. This is really, really, really important because what Hahnemann, why are you laughing at me?
It's all right. I wasn't laughing at you.
No, it
No,
just
but it's really, really, really important.
Well, it is because if you're thinking that I'm going to just take a dose of magnesium, carbonate, mag carb, instead of taking my magnesium supplement before I go to bed at night, right? Then you are engaging in a completely different process because it brings us to this next philosophical principle, which I'm going to shorten a bunch of Hahnemann statements to say it this way. That which does not cure proves. In other words, when you take a homeopathic remedy, it acts on the body. There's no free ride. So, a remedy, a medicine, needs to be well indicated because it's operating on this very simple principle. The foundational principle of homeopathy is like cures like. So, we love it when we hear like cures like, but there's the inverse, which is like causes like. So these two principles, they're just inverse of each other. So Hahnemann's initial discovery, he's translating Cullen's Materia Medica. He comes across the toxicological symptoms of the cinchona bark, and he says, wait a second, this substance, when you have the toxicological effect, is the same as having malarial symptoms for which it is used medicinally.
It
In other
has the
words,
potential. Yeah. Good.
yeah,
Good, good,
it
good.
has that potential within it. And he's like, wow. And this is the beginning of
It
homeopathy, right?
only cures because it has the potential to create.
Exactly.
Right.
So when a person has, we can call it cinchona disease. If one then takes cinchona, then they basically neutralize each other, right? And if the correct dose and potency are delivered, then that energetic match is a healing response. So now you've got to come forward and say, if I'm taking a medicine for which I do not have that disease, then I get that disease. I will get some effect of that medicine, whatever effect to which I am susceptible. So therefore, if you're taking magnesium carbonicum, right? So this is a medicine that's been around that Hahnemann, the original proving was published in the Chronic Diseases, Materia Medica, Volume 1. You can find it there, published, and it has 661 symptoms.
And these are not nice, gentle, oh, I feel fabulous kind of symptoms. These are brutal headaches, miserable menstrual pains,
Here, let
uh,
me just get my chronic.
evil, rheumatic discomfort, and then a whole lot of mental and emotional symptoms, including uh,
Yeah.
forlorn isolation and desperate loneliness.
So I just grabbed my chronic diseases. So we're not making this stuff up, people, right? So just like grab the book off the bookshelf. So I've got Hahnemann's Chronic Diseases, Their Peculiar Nature and Their Homeopathic Cure, Volume 2. I like the Tafel translation, not the Hempel translation, in case anyone's wondering, because Hempel translated by concept. He didn't like Hahnemann's sort of clunky sentence structure, and he's like, I'll just do it by, idea. Tafel came back and was like, no, thank you. We'll just translate it. Anywho, so this is in volume 2. So I'm just going to read from page 933. These are some of the symptoms that magnesium carbonicum is said to be curative of. Therefore, if you don't have them, you could get them. Contraction and squeezing of the chest with heavy, short breath when sitting and walking. Severe oppression of the chest, at times deep breathing. Pressure, heaviness, and as it were, tightness on the chest, unconnected with breathing in the evening. Sudden pressive pain in the chest. When checked, the breath. How about coryza for several days, particularly in the morning? Cough with scraping in the throat, rough cough also at night. How about tearing from the elbow to the middle of the forearm, seemingly in the periosteum? Violent stitches in the muscles of the right forearm on the anterior surface near the wrist. I
Keep
don't think
going.
I let's see. We've got dreams of money, merriment, sportfulness, and historical events. That's
Sportfulness.
yeah, I like that. In the morning, when sleeping, loud talking while she beats her head against the wall. On awaking, she does not know anything about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So these are symptoms from magnesium carbonicum. Oh, how about yellow stool in the afternoon with straining, and in the afternoon, an ordinary stool?
Wow.
Diarrhea with violent colic and straining some 7 or 8 times a day for 8 days. How about diarrheic stool for several days? Diarrhea 5 times from morning until evening. Diarrhea with green feces. These are all the proving symptoms. So,
Folks, it's really critical you understand this, that when we choose a homeopathic remedy to investigate, to find its healing capacity, its potential, we do look at the toxicological reports, the poisoning reports that human beings have collected over centuries. I mean, there are some examples where, with some, say, venoms, we know for hundreds of years that if a scorpion bites you, you're going to get this, or an adder, or a viper, or a whatever.
box jellyfish.
Yeah, a jellyfish. So, we know something about the toxicology, but the thing about Hahnemann and homeopathy is he said, so what? That's just the beginning. Now let's understand it truly. And to do that, you got to test it, and you got to
Right.
test it on healthy people. So the information that Denise is reading are the proving symptoms, right? And the
Yep.
point that's so critical is that if a substance comes up with 611 symptoms, then a person's got two of them and they're taking that remedy on a daily basis. That the body's, well, just you heard the balloon go up and Denise say, that which doesn't cure proves. And the
Yep.
potential for the body to throw up one or more or 10 of those symptoms is quite real and happens on a regular basis. Hence the need for accurate observation, acute observing, and knowledge of case management in particular, right?
So, in order to know what a remedy does, therefore, it needs to have a proving. You need to have
Approving.
some information because this idea of the dynamic substance, right? Hahnemann tells us. So this is aphorism 20. So for
Mm.
those of you who are like into this, just get your Organon. I'm going from Wenda O'Reilly's sixth edition because this is what we use in school. You see all my little stickies and things. The translation is good. Wenda's improving it now. I know there are people who, we love the Boerge translation, but the way that Wenda has this laid out is great for a student textbook, and that's why we choose this one. Anyway, so aphorism 20 says, this hidden spirit-like power in the inner vason of medicines to alter the human condition and thus to cure diseases is in itself in no way discernible with mere intellectual exertion. It is only by experience, only through its manifestations while it is impinging on the human condition, that we can distinctly perceive it. In other words, we don't know what a medicine does. We know a little bit, maybe from the toxicology, from folklore on the herbal tradition, whatever, but we don't know the whole thing.
Mm.
Because Hahnemann also tells us that in aphorism 153, which is the we call it the strange, rare, and peculiar aphorism, but it's the most characteristic symptom, that's often discerned from the proving, not from some toxicology or whatever. We sometimes will find a remedy because there are some remedies that do things very specifically, and we know to look for them. We know to look, for that, what a homeopath might call a keynote or a characteristic symptom of a remedy. Anyway,
And
so
and so, practically what happens in daily practice is that a client comes in, they tell a homeopath some symptoms, and the prescription might be mag carb. Now, if that person then experiences a mag carb symptom subsequent to that, then the homeopath knows, oh, they know what to do next because they've got an understanding of the remedy, they've got an understanding of the lists of symptoms and the context of the symptoms, and they can adjust the strength of the remedy, the potency of the remedy, the repetition of the remedy accordingly. And it's a seamless process. But if you've been doing that by yourself and you assume, oh, now I've got something new, I need to take something new, we get into some pretty tight and miserable corners. And it takes a hell of a homeopath to get out of some of those corners, right?
It's so true. I mean, it's case management is really important. I want to use this as a moment because I know that some of our team members who are on social media have told us that they see people who are saying, "Well, I'm treating myself because I can't afford a homeopath." And look, I get it because a lot of homeopaths charge a lot of money these days. It's become like a real it's a bit of a racket. Please know that I mentioned Homeopathy Help Now and the Homeopathy Help Network. Like we're a not-for-profit. So like we're not printing money like some of these organizations. We're literally a not-for-profit. And as a part of that, providing accessible care is actually the number one. It's number one on our mission statement. It's part of the four parts of our not-for-profit. And so we have care grants. We've given, I think, just in the last year, $50,000 in care grants. Is that right?
I
Maybe a
believe it
little more
is.
than $50,000 in care grants. And so we actually raise money like through selling books and all kinds of things. We had a gala, we raised money for care grants. People make donations and pay it forward. So if you can't afford care, I mean, we're trying to help people recognize that getting care from a homeopath, a qualified homeopath, is really important. And sometimes, I'll give you an example of something that came up in our clinic this week. We had in our teaching clinic, we had someone come in who's got really complex pathology. And people were like, "Do you think with all of this and the medical suppression she's had, can we help her?" And I said, "I feel much more comfortable with what she's doing, which includes some immunosuppressants and other things, than I do a person who has seen a homeopath who's given them 10 detox protocols and a bunch of nosodes and sarcodes and whatnot." Those cases are harder to turn around. Like I'm worried, I feel a little concerned for the person who wrote in. We have no idea how she's been treated. We just know she's not doing as well.
Mm.
Sometimes those cases are often harder to turn around. Anyway, so kind of to recap though, to pull it in, right?
Yeah.
So so Hahnemann's telling us the only way to know what a medicine does is through approving, right? And so I read to you from aphorism 20, and he goes further in aphorism 21, where he reminds us that the only thing, he says, you've got to have a pure experiment with the medicine and observe what it does. And what you're doing is you're observing the power to bring forth distinct alterations in the condition of the human body, and especially their power to differently tune the healthy person in his condition and to arouse several particular disease symptoms in him. In other words, anyone who is taking a remedy, if you don't need that remedy, there is the potential to produce symptoms. So a lot of times, because people are
Of the
used to the
remedy.
of the remedy, to
Of the
produce
remedy.
of
Yeah.
the remedy, it's called a proving symptom. And so this is why if someone is a good homeopath, they know how to give a remedy without, without bringing forth these symptoms. And there are all different ways that remedies are administered. And in Hahnemann's main goal was rapid and gentle cure, and the emphasis on gentle. So he worked through his entire life to figure out um, how to not have an aggravation. And we've talked about this on this podcast. I mean, thank goodness since we've been working with the 50 millesimal potencies a lot, the number of aggravations that we have seen in our clients has gone down. Now, this isn't to say, please go get yourself a 50 millesimal and do it on your own. I'm just saying that Hahnemann has worked, he gave us the guidelines on how we can deliver the remedies one at a time, gently to bring back health. Right? So we talked about the only way you can know what a remedy does is through approving. Okay. Now, I want to tell you because we've got people who are taking all kinds of substances for which there are not proving. So I'm right now looking at I'm looking at a list of medicines that are available through a popular dispensary. And they have 165 sarcodes available. And this includes all kinds of vitamins, vitamin A, C, D, E, H, K, blah, blah, blah. Um, Testicle. I mean, I don't even know what that would do. Thalamus, T cell factor, spleen, RNA, pituitary gland whole, progesterone, polysarcode, or like all this stuff. So you need to know if you're taking these, and your provider should be telling you very clearly that these substances don't have provings for the most part. I think there are how many sarcodes that have real provings? Let's
I'm going
say
to say
10.
maybe two, three. I mean, what are they?
I was generous in saying 10. Maybe there have been more done, but there certainly aren't 165. There's no evidence for what these do. And so if you're taking these and in a high potency or taking it repeatedly, it's not like a vitamin, right? We don't know what it does. Also, and I think this is also
And it
really
can't
important.
ever act like a vitamin because it
No,
is being prepared homeopathically, as we
right. It's
explained.
been dynamized. It's a medicine. And so, like when I told you about Mag Carbidus, over 600 symptoms of which you may be susceptible to producing after taking that, especially if you do it for a prolonged period of time and without observation of the individual symptoms. So now imagine that you are taking these substances in multitude. So there's a company that has, I don't want to name any of these companies because everybody is entitled to their own business because they've got their own, I don't know if you want to call it karma, but if somebody gets hurt, it's on their, it's on their dollar. So there's a company that's got a substance that's sold through doctors that has 70 substances in it and in multiple potencies, which equals 181 doses in each directed dose to take, which it's said to take it 3 times a day, which means you're taking 543 doses of a remedy every single day, most of which do not have provings, have not been validated for their safety through the HPUS, the pharmacopoeia. They're given, many of them are in X potency, so a 1 to 10 dilution, multiple, like for example, there's mercury corrosivus and mercury, soluble mercury. So two mercury compounds, 30X, 200X, and 1000X, along with alumina, 30X and 200X. Now, most of the people who I think are going to be purchasing a product like this have probably given up their aluminum cookware and taken their mercury fillings out by now. And yet they are being given these, substances for which we don't know. I mean, we have provings on the mercury compounds and on alumina, right? But do we know how they work if they're taken together and given in X potency along with these other things, along with uh, nickelum metallicum, palladium, argentum metallicum, sodium molybdate, viscum, and a couple of bowel nosodes in multiple potencies when we already know that bowel nosodes repeated are contraindicated. I mean, so you need to know this. Like if you are a consumer of homeopathy, or if you've studied homeopathy and no one has told you that this is contraindicated and that we don't have the, the sort of inherent safety around it, start asking questions. I would.
Would it be because I've got Denise, maybe just to hammer home the point, I've got the proving of melatonin here, which I conducted back in the day, right?
Yep. Yep.
But we all know what melatonin does. We all know and we all know that it's available as a supplement in the over the counter,
Yep.
mainly to deal with jet lag. That's its clinical indications, although some people use it because they can't sleep, which is actually off script. But in the proving of melatonin, so that's where we take in a dynamization and give it to a bunch of healthy people to see what it does. It creates a sensation as if my head is empty and being pulled backwards. Tinnitus, very loud, a bit foggy in the head. I've got an immediate frontal tight headache, which lasted for 10 minutes. Neck tension. Right side of my right eyeball, burst blood vessels. Runny nose, pressure behind the right eye and the right nostril. Vomiting a white substance. Burning pain and hunger in the stomach. And it just goes on. Extremity pain, sleep symptoms, and then mentally and emotionally, it created a whole lot of upset, in this instance, rudeness, and explosive anger pulling my hair with frustration. So do you understand Denise's point? Such an important point. Just with one of those substances, that this substance has the capacity to do these 485 things. It's being taken off label, included in another in another product, and it can only prove, right?
That which does not cure proves. In other words, like Hahnemann determined, right? So let's take this right back to the beginning. Go back to Hahnemann and his discovery, right? The law of similars, which is the underpinning of homeopathy. You take a homeopathic remedy that matches the symptoms of what you have. This is aphorism 3. Know what needs to be cured in the patient, know what's curative in medicines, apply according to principles, remove the obstacles. That's it. So work the inverse. If you don't have the symptoms, then you are essentially doing approving. Now, one of the things that, folks who are trying to just sell you on stuff have figured out is if you give enough hits of a homeopathic medicine, maybe something will work and cure a symptom, right? But you also have no idea what's going on anymore, right? It's like a confusion to the system. How can that be good? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings me to camphor. So,
Oy, oy, oy.
somehow, Camphora officinalis has become the sorbet course between protocols. I, I can't. So you need to understand, we need to all understand, what does camphor do? Because if you don't have camphor disease and you take camphor remedy or medicine, then you run the risk of producing camphor symptoms, right? So I'm just going to read to you from Timothy Allen from his field primer of Materia Medica, right? So this is what the medicine Camphora officinalis does. It produces violent convulsions, hysterical and epileptiform, delirium, and various phases of nervous excitement. It also produces coldness of the body and profound collapse with feeble pulse. The generalities are clonic spasm with loss of consciousness, convulsive rotation of the arms, rapid sinking of strength, opisthon. I can never pronounce this word.
Opisthotos.
Is that how you say it? It's when your eyes go back in your head.
Oh, no. I was thinking you're arching your back. I was thinking of opisthotos. But
Oh,
no,
yeah. No, that's
something
what
else.
it is. That's exactly what it is. Sorry.
Okay.
You're right. Restlessness, easily started with throbbing, weakness with rapid sinking of strength, great sensitiveness to cold air, which increases all the troubles. The patient is only partially conscious of most of his pains. The mind, extreme anxiety, dread of being alone in the dark, agitation and haste, attacks of violent rage. Head, vertigo, aggravated by stooping, heaviness of the head, sometimes with vertigo, rush of blood to the head. The brain feels constricted. Do I need to say any more? It goes on and on.
Could I just add to it? And those are the descriptions from somebody else of watching people that are having camphor symptoms. In the proving itself, let me just read you what the
Oh, yeah.
the subjective experience is. Because this person is uh, a fearful terror seized me, and I knew not whither to fly. I cried out loud, and so I'm dead, I said to myself, but a reality which I am doomed to experience forever. And yet I confess this very morning that no heavy sin rests upon my conscience. Um, my hand, thus hopelessly devoted to everlasting damnation, I went to my closet. I felt for it in the dark, but to my horror, my hand no longer perceived resistance. This is a really miserable, the worst experience
And I
imaginable.
Yeah, and I have seen, it's only been 2 cases that I have seen of people who have done this. There was a woman, I told you about her, Al. She was carrying around Camphora 1M in her bag, and she would take it regularly because she was taking protocols all day long. She would sometimes take 2, 3, 5, 10 remedies a day, and she would give this to herself or her kids, and she got stuck in a camphor state. And she was so sick. Now, let's turn this, because remember the inverse. If someone is in a camphor state, I've used this where it's homeopathically
Oh
indicated.
my God, what a great remedy.
It's a
Yeah.
great remedy
Mm.
for a person who is in a collapse state, right? If you are not in that state, then there is the potential for you to prove that. So Hahnemann does not say, he's not saying take camphora as a palate cleanser between protocols, right? Camphor is camphor as a substance, it's mothballs, right? So, you go like old lady mothball closets. It's that strong smell. Just like Vicks Vapor Rub or the strong smell of coffee, those things can antidote remedies. They can. A remedy that's well selected doesn't antidote very easily. It sticks. Antidotes happen. So when does a person need an antidote? They need an antidote if the wrongly chosen remedy, and this is from the Organon, if the wrongly chosen medicine produces new and troublesome symptoms. But he says every medicine prescribed for a case of disease which produces new and troublesome symptoms must be first partially neutralized as soon as possible by an antidote. So it's a corrective action, right? And the way that we work with this is if a person is having a big reaction, you retake the case, you look at all of those symptoms, and then you can move a person toward health. A homeopathic remedy is not a material detox in no sense of the word. There really isn't such a thing as a clear or a detox protocol. That's isopathy. Okay. Isopathy is giving same essentially to cure same. And if it works, then it works. But Hahnemann says that it's a third course of medicine. It's in the footnote to aphorism 56. Let me find that real quick. He says there are those who would like to create a third application of medicines against disease through isopathy, as it is called, namely the cure of a present disease with the same miasm. And he goes on and then he says, uh, he talks about, oh, he talks about a few things. We'll leave that out. But he says, um, mhm, wanting to cure a human disease with an identical human disease matter is going too far. Nothing results from it but calamity and aggravation of the disease. So this goes back to what Alistair was talking about in the beginning, and the person who maybe is getting, seeing a homeopath who's doing this miasmatic prescribing or using the same to cure same, right? This Hahnemann says very clearly, you can find this in again the footnote to aphorism 56, wanting to cure a human disease with an identical human disease matter is going too far. Nothing results from it but calamity and aggravation of the disease.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because ultimately it's very it's an allopathic thinking process
Totally.
using what should be homeopathic remedies that are not being applied homeopathically. And I just when I'm hearing you talk, Dee, I'm thinking to myself, it's like the Schussler tissue salts in a way. The
Yep.
Schussler tissue salts, which are diluted and prepared homeopathically from homeopathic pharmacies, can only ever regulate because they have no capacity to replace, right? They're not a supplement. Do
No,
you know
they're
what I'm
not.
saying?
Yep,
And
yep.
and if you look at the languaging on the back of the packet, they're all smart about it because they know that they can't make those claims. They cannot supplement. They could only at best regulate. And
Mm,
I think that language is important when we see that and then the examples you were giving before about the vitamins being added to or the homeopathically prepared vitamin whatever it might have been being added as if it's going to supplement it
yeah,
is it's impossible.
right. Because
um
it's a totally different thing. It operates on a totally different principle.
well, and it's also, I mean, assuming that there's something in the remedy, there's something substantial in the remedy, but as we've described, the those if it's been prepared homeopathically, then it means it's diluted, it's succussed, all of
Yeah.
the matter has
But like
been
people
removed
think
from
that
it.
people think, oh, well, then that it's safer because it's ultra diluted. But in reality, and this is sort of this paradoxical problem that we have, is homeopathy safe? Are homeopathic remedies safe? Yes, comma, when used appropriately. Not homeopathic remedies are safe, full stop. Homeopathic remedies are safe, comma, when used appropriately.
Or
Now,
when used homeopathically by
and
somebody who knows
exactly,
homeopathy.
yeah, they've got to be used appropriately. Now, let's go back to this nosode question. We're not saying nosodes are bad by any stretch of the imagination. What we're saying is you need to understand what they do and use them appropriately. So if someone has, if we use homeopathic terms, psychotic disease, that doesn't mean give Meterinum. In fact, psychosis is not gonorrhea from which the remedy is prepared. It's like it's not even that, right? So so we've got to get really clear about this. So there are yes, there are nosodes, in other words, remedies that are made from disease products that we know a fair bit about. But there are, let me just go to this list again, just to say how many are out there. Um, okay, so I'm just using this one organization. There are plenty of people who are selling this stuff. So they have 191 nosodes for sale. 191. I think there are less than 10 nosodes that have gone through the process of the HPUS, the pharmacopoeia.
Yeah, right. I think that's
Less than
probably,
10.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so if someone is giving a person, let's see, I'm going to pick one
Easy
here.
Town.
It's just like, okay, so if someone is giving a person the remedy feline chlamydia,
Oh,
is there approving? Is there approving of encephalitis? What are they giving? How about diphtheria, diphtherianum?
uh, based upon what's the starter substance for that
Where did they
remedy?
get it? How about Crohn's nosode? I
Oh,
saw a client recently who had been given that, and I was just like, oh my gosh. You know, so I
was
when
that
you
from a
think,
human or from an animal? It's really
well, and
interesting.
then you
Again,
bring
I'm
up
thinking
another
from the
problem.
starter substance, but
Well, if we think about so let's think about starter substance for a minute. So I've been, because I've been working on this project, I've been looking at just all of this, all the things that are available and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that there are a whole bunch of sarcodes that come from pigs. So if you see a sarcode, a remedy that's made from some sort of non-diseased, I don't even know how to say, like, what's even the terminology for it? Because we used to say a sarcode was healthy tissue, but it's really not necessarily tissue. It's any sort of physiological substance.
well, it can be a secretion or an enzyme, I think, and taken in yeah, taken from a healthy organism. That's, I think, the way that I used to describe it. But
Because you
these
would
days,
compare it to nosode because it would be disease product, right?
yeah,
So,
that's right.
okay, so if that's the case,
They're
I mean,
mainly
look,
from animals,
so,
pigs and sheep.
well, this is it. So let's say, let's just play this through. I'm sorry, I feel like this is sort of like scary day. But when you hear people write in with like something scary, then you kind of have to address it. Anyway, so like there are sarcodes that are out there that are made from pig products. I found a bunch of them. So if it says Suisse after it, that's French for pig. So
Mm.
I was like, does that mean pig? Sure enough. So let's just say that nobody's talking about where the starter substance comes from. And now we're seeing lots and lots of people with allergies, including, mast cell activation syndrome and alpha-gal. So let's say that a person has an allergy to mammalian products. A person may get themselves into trouble if they take a lot of X potency.
Oh,
Yeah,
low
it's
potency animal product, red meat product. Wow.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you
how,
see that article this week about the
yeah,
Australian kid
yeah,
who he passed on? He died. He's the first Australian death after with sorry, he had alpha gal syndrome. He ate
yeah.
red meat and had a
It's the
anaphylactic
second,
shock.
yep, second case.
Second
Um,
case on the planet.
Second case on the planet of somebody dying from alpha-gal. So, these are the things that, we're working on with homeopathy.
I think
How do we work with some of these, problems? We had a great alpha-gal case in our clinic. I've seen a couple in practice, and, been able to move people to a much higher level of health. I get nervous with some of these allergy things because what we're seeing now is idiopathic anaphylaxis, which basically means it's anaphylaxis of unknown origin. People who are not responding to any known allergen, but just seemingly spontaneously, erupting in
Oh,
a major allergic response. And so, sorry, let me just finish this one thought because I saw a kid who had it happen, and it turns out he had some sort of like a post-workout drink that had all these ingredients in it. And I said, because this kid has had food allergies, and I said to the mom, you get me a copy of the label of that? And I started looking at the label to see what hidden allergens might have been in there. The allergist didn't think to ask that question. They were like, oh, well, we don't know. It's not the things that, he's already been tested as allergic to. And so therefore it becomes idiopathic. When I looked at what was on that label, there were tons of these hidden mammalian products, and I got nervous that, there was sort of a
wow.
secondary thing brewing.
Okay. That's really interesting. I need a research assistant, someone who can go into our scary basement and dig around for I reckon I must have been close to having patient zero
Of
um,
alpha-gal.
from
Yeah.
Alpha Gal, but it's on paper and it's in those boxes with the kind of with the mold growing off them.
Don't say that. Don't say that. If we have mold in our basement, we have to move.
Uh,
Don't even say it.
all right, okay.
So, so look, guys, sorry that this is a little bit of those, kind of cautionary tale days, but we've there's probably so much good that can come from a lot of these substances, right? We just don't understand what happens if you give cytomegalovirus 50 m
Yeah,
to someone every day for a month, what that might do to them.
yeah,
And so, therefore, I don't know. I mean, we don't even know what happens if you give multiple remedies a day every day for an extended period of time. I took a new case last week of someone who um, sent me their remedy history. And over the course of any given week period, they had been prescribed upwards of like 15 remedies, most of them nosodes and sarcodes. To be taking at a time. But it might be like, oh, take this one on a Monday, that one on a Tuesday. But when I added up every week, there were at least 15 different doses of high potency nosodes and sarcodes being taken. And none of those substances that had been prescribed have a proving. So we need to get more provings. We
yeah.
need to do more phase 1 clinical trials.
Hmm.
Because if we're on a roll now with homeopathy, the last thing that we want to have happen is a bunch of adverse events and then it gets squashed. We'd be much better off to take control of our own situation and to say, I don't know that I need um, to prescribe Powassan disease 200C without knowing what it does, right?
How about a lovely example to finish? Um, I
Let's
just
end on
changed.
a high note.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of. But I've had my gammy hand this week, and folks, 8 months ago, I got ticked. I got Lyme disease, and I've been managing my symptoms. And this week, I had a bit of a flare, and Denise has been brilliant.
Well, wait. You had Lyme disease and then you got bit by a black widow spider.
Yeah,
And then that sort of, anyway, go on.
and I had to suck my burger.
Oh,
Uh,
God.
God, that
Because you had
experience.
lockjaw. Yeah.
And then, but anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that we finally found a remedy which has really helped this week because the symptoms are pretty miserable. And it's Hepasulf. And Hepasulf has really helped just minimize a whole bunch of the symptoms. But it's really interesting. Last night, do you remember I got that really painful, really painful sore throat? It's like nothing to do with Lyme,
And I said
everything
to
to do
you,
with Hepasulf.
I said, exactly. You're having an aggravation from the Hep sulf. Time to stop.
That's it.
And
And so, it was just good to, rather than, oh no, I need to now take a whole lot of stuff because I've got a sore throat and I'm going to get flu or something. It was just that the homeopath happens to be Denise, just recognized, no, that's a proving symptom because you've been chewing on these Hepasolf tablets. And while I'm on the improve, thank you, touch wood, I've also developed a proving symptom, and we just nailed it
Yep.
because we observed what it actually was. Yeah.
And a good homeopath will know what to do, right? Because the most important thing in being a homeopath is case management. Finding the first remedy should be easy-ish,
Mm.
right? Um, but knowing how to manage a case over time is what's so important. So if we kind of wrap up with that, the woman who wrote in, right, what I hope her homeopath will do is to evaluate her progress over time and say what we're working with isn't helping, because instead of putting life back into the organism, which is the miracle of prescribing according to Hahnemann's philosophy of chronic diseases, we're putting life into an organism otherwise losing life. This poor woman is actually developing new and potentially deeper symptoms. If she's saying she's got epileptic symptoms that are new to her, then that says that the direction of cure is going in a totally wrong direction. So the homeopath needs to stop and assess, right? And if there are
Yeah.
multiple remedies being given at the same time, then there's no way to perform that assessment because you don't know what might be helping, what might be harming. There might be, if somebody's taking 10 remedies, there could be one good one inside of, and nine that aren't helping, but you don't know which one is which. And so, judicious, it's not candy. It ain't candy, people. And camphor is not a sorbet course.
Now, important, far more important than that is, should we be sitting beside each other, or is this working for you? Dee, what do you think? This is
I
our
mean,
first podcast separate.
yeah. Okay, so there are things I like about it. I have my I have my stuff. I can get to my books. I have my big screen and my notes, and I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
I also like sitting with you and having a casual podcast. I'll tell you what I'm not doing again is sitting in the living room on a reclining chair. It's like not for me.
Yeah.
But we'd like feedback. What do you guys think? Like what's a good environment for recording? And would we seem more professional if we wore our headsets? All right.
Or
I
if we
think
were just a get up.
a get up. Like what kind of get up?
I don't know. I'm wearing my get up today. I've got my vest, my sort of long vest,
Uh-huh.
like a smoking jacket.
Oh, there you go. Got your Hahnemann pipe.
All right.
Um, Yeah, but thank you for those of you that are providing feedback. We really appreciate it because this is kind of public service for us. We really want people to understand understand what's happening with homeopathy, choosing the straight and narrow with homeopathy, and then, we want to support all of the organizations that are out there. We also want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. So
Yeah.
let's keep the conversation going, shall we?
All right. See you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Got a packed schedule, but still dreaming of becoming a homeopath? AHE's part-time professional program brings real-time classes, live clinical training, and a full professional curriculum, all 100% online. It's rigorous. It's legit. And yes, it's built for people who have jobs, kids, lives, and a whole lot of ambition. Start your journey to licensure without hitting pause on your life. Visit ahe.online and take the first step.